Hello there, how are ya? Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit more about stress. So over the course of the last few days, we've talked about food and we've talked about emotional hunger and physical hunger. We've talked about pausing and the importance of it. We've even tackled emotions and learning to feel those and how to implement more pleasure into your life, into your day. And so today what we're going to focus on is the culprit itself, stress. So I have found through my journey in life that a lot of times I create my own stress. And it's not always completely necessary and it's not always serving me. So that's what we want to look at today. And what I'm going to include is some information on a woman that I learned a lot about when I was going through life coach training. And her name is Byron Katie. We studied a lot of her work as part of the Martha Beck Life Coach Training Program. And she really is a fascinating woman with an amazing story. And so if you want to just Google Byron Katie and you can learn more about her. She's got a really wild story of how she got to where she is. But there's one concept that Byron Katie teaches which has blown my mind since the first moment I learned it from my own personal life coach. And it's what she refers to as the 3 types of business, the 3 kinds of business. All right. And what that looks like is this. There's 3 types of business in the world. There's my business, right? So that's everything I have going on in my head and everything that I'm doing in my world. And then there's your business. So that's everything you're thinking in your head and what you're doing in the world. And then there's God's business, right? Or you can refer to it as source or the universe or whatever works for you, whatever language works for you. For the sake of this video, I'm going to continue to call it God. So there's God's business, right? And what God's thinking and what God's doing in the world. So those are the 3 types of business. And here's how this works, right? I have no way of knowing what you're thinking, even though sometimes I might think I do. I have no idea what God is thinking. I only know what I'm thinking. I only know the contents of my own brain, my own mind. And what happens sometimes in life is we think we know what other people are thinking. And when that happens, we can create a lot of unnecessary stress for ourselves. Let me give you an example. So when I first learned this concept of the 3 types of business, it was when I was working with my very first life coach ever. And that's when I was still working in wireless telecommunications. So I still had my corporate gig. And I was always stressed out when I was working in the corporate world. And I was always afraid I wasn't doing a good enough job. I was constantly worried that I was going to get fired. I mean, that was a real fear that I was going to get fired. I thought they're going to fire me. I'm going to get fired. They're going to fire me. And I always thought oh, my bosses aren't happy. They're not happy with what I'm doing. They don't like this email that I sent. And I would get myself all wound up about this stuff. And so when I learned this concept of the different types of business, I was able to see how often I was not in my own business, but in my boss's business, in my colleague's business, right? Thinking they didn't like an email that I was sending, or thinking they didn't like the work that I did, thinking I was going to get fired, right? I was in their business. I wasn't in my own. And the truth is, I have absolutely no way of knowing what they were thinking. Think about this. Think about this. Think about how often you're in somebody else's business. We can do this with our spouse or our partner when we think that they're mad about something that we said. And we start to create stories around that. And we start to create our own stress. So the whole point of today and kind of understanding your business and whose business you're in is just realizing how much stress is unnecessary and doesn't even need to be there, right? When we talk about reducing our stress, like let's look at understanding how much stress we're causing that's for our own selves that's not even real. Look at whose business you're in. When I introduce this concept to my private clients, because I always introduce the 3 types of business to my private clients. In fact, if we've ever been on the phone before, I have introduced the concept of 3 types of business, right? I describe it like a 3-lane highway. So just picture a 3-lane road, and you have you in the middle, everyone to the left, God, universe, source to the right. And so you're cruising along in your lane, right? And you start to notice like you're veering off into everybody else's lane. What are they thinking? What are they thinking about me? What are they saying? You're getting out of your lane. You're driving off into everybody else's lane. And then who's in your lane? There's nobody there. Your lane is empty. Your lane is neglected. You're neglecting yourself in that moment because you think you know what everyone else is thinking. And that just causes a whole lot of unnecessary emotion, like stress, like worry, like overwhelm, like fear. Why? It doesn't need to. So, when I learned this, I started to question myself constantly. Whose business am I in? Anytime I had a thought about anything, whose business am I in? When I was at work, by the way, this changed everything for me at work. And it's funny because when I started working with my personal life coach, I started working with her in March of 2015, I think it was. And by July, I was leaving the company that I was working for, which is just kind of a funny story. But when I learned this concept of the 3 types of business, I was able, and I would, start having a bad day, worried what the bosses were thinking, worried what the colleagues were thinking, worried what my clients at the time were thinking. I could just check in and say, wait, whose business am I in right now? I'm in their business. Let me bring myself back to my business. What do I know to be true? What do I know for sure right now? And it's just that ability to kind of like bring yourself back from their lane and remind yourself that you have no way of knowing what anybody else is thinking. This can be a game changer for you, especially if you're in the habit of being in other people's business. We think we know what they're thinking. We think we know because we know people, and so we know what they're thinking, but you never do. And the whole point is like, worry about you. Mind your business. Stay in your lane. So for today, just practice this. Ask yourself throughout the day, whose business am I in? Do I need to be thinking about this right now? Do I need to be worrying about this? Do I even know this to be true? And just check and notice how often you're in somebody else's business. This can be huge. And for me, it was a great way to reduce a lot of unnecessary stress I brought on myself just by thinking I knew what other people were thinking. So give it a try, see what happens. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you soon. Bye.